spanning the globe to bring you the constant variety of sport, the thrill of victory, and the agony of defeat.
Number 2 of the high school football season. But just recapping week 1, there wasn't a whole lot of games around here that we cover as far as team-wise. But just bouncing to some of the Jamboree games real quick, what was your plus and minuses from teams around here?
One game in particular kind of stuck out to me, and it was a pretty big matchup throughout the state, was the Piedmont and Fife, as far as being the biggest jamboree anyway. The fact that Piedmont was able to hold them scoreless, that was a little bit a surprise.
Was there any head coaches around here that you thought made an impact, even though it was pretty much jamboree week?
Well, I think one guy that really is talking a big game anyway. I mean, we're yet to see if it's going to pan out to be that way on the field. But Coach Putnam at Sylvania, he really seems like he has a real plan to turn that thing around.
Well, there wasn't much action last week, like I just said, because of jamboree games.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess we can go ahead and look, at some of the scores from last week.
Yeah.
And is there any particular score that stood out to you in any particular game that stood out to you from each classification?
Well, as far as just classification goes, the 1A matchup with R.A. Hubbard and Cherokee kind of stuck out to me. R.A. Hubbard is a perennial, year in, year out playoff team, and they kind of got embarrassed. Cherokee kind of put it on them 43-7. Another matchup that not necessarily the result had anything to do with it, but just a good matchup that pit two 6A teams that are in the playoffs year in, year out would be Southside and Oxford. So pretty good little showdown to be your first week and open up with them. Being Southside having to go to Oxford, I believe, and come out on the losing end of that. Oxford actually won that game 24-9. Another one, a lot of people talked about this, Baker being the first time ever ranked. Maybe too much pressure for them or what have you, but they were able to kind of pound on Williamson 31-6. Another game that is actually in our area of coverage will be the Gadsden City Titans, and they played Auburn, and I knew this would be a barn burner, and it lived up to every bit of what we thought it would. And Auburn actually won that game late, 45-38. You might want to look there in 6A. Also, if you want to go, you keep going with the whole new coach thing. I mean, he's not a new coach. He's been around forever, but he was able to start out with his first game at Abbeville with a win, being Dale Pruitt beating Columbia.
Well, looking at some of the games from last week, Oxford beating Southside there. Is Oxford going to be better this year than they was last year, or is this year kind of going to be a stumble year for them?
I think Oxford will be better. They were solid last year, but you got a kid like Kenny Britt who's coming up, and a lot of people are really excited about him. He could be that guy that could be your next Rock Thomas, and maybe really spur them on.
Well, what about Dale Pruitt? They beat Columbia 35-7 opening week. Do you think he, put a stamp on what he can do there?
I don't know if you really can tell a whole lot about that. I mean, Columbia is just not very good. So, I mean, I expected Abbeville to win that game, and they did it. So, basically, they took care of business. That's really all you can say about that one.
Well, what about Coleman? I know they beat Arab 56-7. Arab has a new head coach that came over from North Sand.
Uh-huh.
They got another game this week that's going to be tough. How well can Abbeville perform?
I mean, like I say, with actually Arab, they've got a tough game this week. Playing Madison County. Madison County is a school that actually made it to the semifinals last year. So I mean, very impressive. and Arab really, I didn't expect to. I mean, not necessarily to beat Coleman, but I expected them to be more competitive, and they kind of let me down on that note. So I mean, it's and this is a huge year for Gilbert and Company because they had a real resurgent year last year, got him off to a really good start of his tenure, and so he really needs to go ahead and continue that this year.
Well, any games that stood out to you in 5A or 4A from last week?
One in particular, the Valley Cubs. I expected just a dogfight with them in Jacksonville, and they actually pounded them 46-14. So that was pretty impressive. Another game that, and a team I think a lot of people are sleeping on, is the Volunteers of Central Clay County. I mean, year in, year out, they win 8-9 ball games. I mean, it's just all they know how to do is win, but yet they got no love whatsoever in the polls. They're like 15, 16, somewhere in that ballpark, and they beat Montford 21-7, which is, pretty impressive win, I would say.
Well, what about in 4A? Andalusia beating T.R. Miller 25-0.
It's a big win, but not for the reasons that you might think. I mean, T.R. Miller is number 7 in 3A, and Andalusia is actually, they're ranked currently, but they weren't at the time in 4A. They were just outside. So from a football standpoint, that is not a huge upset. But the biggest upset of that whole game is a stat that you actually have for us.
Well, that stat would be T.R. Miller going 354 games, scoring in those games, and being shut out this past week by Andalusia. That's something that is far beyond belief. Can you, Artie, can you imagine going that many games scoring?
Well, I mean, that stat actually dates back to the early 80s, late 70s. I mean, we're talking a long time ago. And for that to come to an end, I would feel bad personally for, if I were playing on that team this year, because I was the one that let the streak die.
Well, now the streak is, I think, 317 by the Hoover Bucks.
Mm-hmm.
Who would have thought that?
That's true.
But, going on down the list here, any other games between 3 and 1A that stuck out to you?
Actually, Tanner kind of popped out at me. I mean, this is a team that usually scores a lot of points, but they were actually only able to score 28 versus West Limestone, and only actually won the game by a touchdown, 28-21. As to where last year they pounded West Limestone 47-0. So that's an interesting little tidbit. And as far as a team, or actually pretty much the only teams in our coverage area that actually played this past week, being Section and Pisgah. You had Pisgah coming in at 14-15, somewhere in there in 3A, and of course, Section being, staying down for the most part. So, you would kind of expect maybe Pisgah to blow them out, but it was a very competitive game. Eventually, Pisgah was able to, really unleash the pass and throw some screen passes and get Jordan Jeffrey going, and he busted 2 big runs, and that was able to propel them to a W for Coach Doug Haynes' first win as Pisgah head coach.
Or anybody else in 2A or 1A that stuck out?
Not really. I mean, one that sort of stuck out to me as far as just the margin of victory would be Cold Springs. This is a team that last year had a winning record, first time in quite some time, I do believe. And they were able to beat a pretty good, year in, year out 1A team in Brilliant 41-14. To me, just the margin of victory was a little bit staggering.
Well, looking at Hoover and Clay Chalkville, they both had to go to Murfreesboro, Tennessee, and play in an Alabama-Tennessee Classic up at Middle Tennessee State University. And 7A for Hoover, beating Oakland, who's in Tennessee, 24-6. Hoover proves herself year in and year out. How do they stay so focused and so dominant each year, no matter who they play? It seems like
they expect to win. It's a business-like mentality. They went into Blue Raider Stadium with the attitude that they were going to, wave the Alabama high school flag high, and that's exactly what they did. And they put a whooping on a good Oakland team.
Well, what about Clay Chalkville? They beat Blackman 38-7. Pretty dominant win there for them too. Can they make another run this year?
They're thinking about repeating. I think anything short of repeating will be a disappointment for the Cougars. I mean, you got a guy like Tyrell Pigmy back there playing quarterback for you, and you expect to win. I mean, the defense has had its issues, but if you look at this score, I mean, I didn't actually see this game, but to hold Blackman to 7, that's pretty good. Maybe they've made those adjustments necessary.
Well, after kind of recapping what happened from week 1 and some of the Jamboree games, already let's go into week 2 now and get to some of the games and some of the scores that we cover around here. And just looking, at some of the games we got here, starting off with Dade County going to North Sand Mountain. What do you look forward to in that game?
Well, I don't really expect this game to change. I mean, Dade kind of put it on them last year, and I kind of expect the same. I mean, from what I've heard, North Sand's improved, but, with Dade being able to beat Ider, that makes you think that Dade County should win this game. What do you think on that one?
I kind of think the same thing. Dade County, they're a tough team. It seems like they're not really a speed type team. They're always physical though.
Mm-hmm.
North Sand, they've had their ups and downs.
True.
This year, I kind of think it'll be more on the the downslope for them.
Mm-hmm.
Once again, because they'll be so young.
Well, depth issues too. You got to look at it that way. And like I say, when you play a physical team like a Dade County and not having a lot of guys, it's definitely an uphill battle.
And not having the roster spot.
Sure.
In there to counter everything.
Mm-hmm.
But looking at this game, I'm gonna have to pick. I think Dade County to go up to North Sand and come out with a win for this one.
Mm-hmm.
But keep going on here. You got Collinsville going to Cedar Bluff, who's ranked number 6. Can Collinsville get a win at number 6 Cedar Bluff this week?
This game is kind of a toss-up because both of these schools are determined to have better years than last year. Cedar Bluff is definitely coming off of a shocking end to last year to an extent because they went through the season and didn't really live up to their potential, but yet when they got in the playoffs, they really played their best ball. So can they continue that success into this season, into this first game against a Collinsville team that also is extremely motivated because they feel like they laid an egg last year for the most part into their introduction into 2A. As far as a pick on this game, I would have to go with Cedar Bluff. I think there's just too many weapons for the Bluff.
I think Cedar Bluff comes away with a win over Collinsville. Like you said, too many weapons for them. Plus, they're ranked number 6. Does that have anything to do with it? It may not. We'll just have to see come Friday night.
Mm-hmm.
Collinsville, on the other hand, can they have a playoff top year?
They could. They really could. That particular region is, it's very top heavy. You got 5 and you got the rest, and you got those 3 spots, and it's wide open. So I mean, if you can beat the Clevelands of the region, if you can beat the Gastons of the region, you could definitely slip in the playoffs.
Well, for me, making a pick on this game, I'm gonna have to go Cedar Bluff as well. And the next game right here, Galesville at Shamrock. I think Shamrock will be more improved this year. I don't think Galesville will do too much. They just don't seem to have that it factor, really.
Mm-hmm. But you got to admit they've shown some improvement over the past few years.
Yes, I would agree on that. But just an overall team-wise effort, I don't think Gage will be strong enough to hang with Sandrock. I think it'll be close, maybe for the first quarter and a half. But after that, I just think Sandrock is just too much for them.
So basically, not enough weapons, you're saying, for Gilesville.
Yes.
I'd have to agree with that one. I think Sandrock's a really interesting team coming into this season because you're getting a team that new blood, if you will, because Jacob Way stepping down or rather retiring, and having their long-time offense coordinator actually take over. It's going to be interesting to see the little idiosyncrasies that he might, as far as changes to that team. Maybe they throw the ball more, maybe they run the ball more. It's going to be really interesting to see how he does things compared to Jacob Way. And as far as picking this game, I would have to agree with you. I think that, for the most part, just team speed in general, Rock's probably got them. And I think that'll be the biggest factor in this one.
I'd agree with that. Gadsden City at Oxford should be, I don't know, maybe one of the best games that night or this Friday night. Gadsden City come off a tough loss last week at home to Auburn. Oxford coming off a win against a gritty Southside team. If I had to go and make a pick on this game, I'm going to say Oxford just because they're at home. I think home field advantage gives them that extra boost and motivation to play harder, play more physical, and just get the win. But don't get me wrong, Gadsden City, they'll be ready to play. They're always good. They've got speed, talent everywhere. But I just think the home field advantage for Oxford is just a little too much.
Well, this game is Gadsden City's to lose for the most part. I think if they play like they can, they'll be too much for Oxford. But, as we saw in this past week, Gadsden City had a lot of trouble with special teams and stopping Oxford, or rather stopping Auburn. Can they, shore up those defensive issues and those special team issues with an explosive guy like Kenny Britt for Oxford, as to where Oxford's saying, we played a not a really explosive offensive team in Southside, and now we're playing a newly free-flowing offense like Gadsden City. It's going to be a huge test for them, and I would have to go with the Titans to bounce back.
Well, what about New Hope at Fort Payne? Last year, Fort Payne went to New Hope, shut them out 37-0. This year's Fort Payne team, I seen them in their Jamboree game last week. They had their ups and downs at times. Put in a new system, running a little bit more of a motion type offense with a bunch of read options and option plays. I think Fort Payne will come out with more speed, play more physical. Defense is still kind of a question mark in my view, because I think their front seven still needs some work to be done, but I think they can get there. But Fort Payne being at home, they always play good at home. They always have a good turnout in the crowd and everything with the fans and everybody. And I'm going to go with the Wildcats on this one.
Just from a depth issue and just from a talent issue, you definitely got to go with Fort Payne to win this game. But on a side note, as far as this game goes, with New Hope, you got to look at it as far as trying to just feed this quarterback along. They're really excited about him, and so just try to get off to a good start to start this game. Get nobody hurt, play solid, do the best you can do in defeat. But they have got to be extremely excited looking forward in the season, because they're in a region that's kind of wide open. It's there if they can get things together and step up and take it.
Well, what about going down the list, Crossville at Douglas?
This is going to be a pretty ugly game, not from a competitive standpoint. It's just two teams that are really struggling. And with Douglas, they lost to I wouldn't call them a lackluster, but I'd say a little bit above that DAR team, 27-7. That's got to be, as far as from a confidence standpoint, that's got to be like a kick in the gut for the most part. And Crossville actually played pretty well in their Jamboree game, so they got to have a little confidence. I'm going to have to go with the Lions on this one.
Yeah. I think Crossville will, go to Douglas, handle their business, and get a win there. Looking at a 3A and 4A matchup with North Jackson at Guntersville. You got Jordan Bentley coming back for Guntersville. Outstanding running back. He can play defense as well. Games in Guntersville, but North Jackson is looking to have a bounce back year. How do you see this one, taking place?
It's going to be a typical North Jackson and Guntersville game. You're going to see a lot of offense and not a whole lot of defense, but it's not going to be necessarily from a standpoint of bad defense. It's just going to be from a standpoint of two teams that are geared to score some points. You got Jordan Bentley, who's probably going to run up and down the field like a wild man, and you got your Chiefs, who year in, year out under Coach Rose can score at will. And you're going to have a lot of yards, you're going to have a lot of fireworks, and that's just going to be a really good show out next to the lake. But as far as picking a winner, and it's really difficult, but I would probably have to go with the best guy on the field in his team, and I would have to go with Guntersville.
So you think Jordan Bentley and Guntersville can run the show?
I'm not saying they're going to blow them out. I'm just saying they're going to get by them.
Or let me put it this way. What do you think the line would be on this game if you had to pick?
As far as a point spread, I would definitely go with 7 or lower. I think this is going to be a really competitive game.
Well, if I had to pick, just looking at it here, I would have to go probably with Guntersville as well. Jordan Bentley, outstanding player, like we said. Like you said, he's going to probably run up and down the field. No defense. You'll probably play in this game, hardly.
One thing I will say, though, as far as he goes, that could really hurt the Wildcats is the fact of their quarterback. One thing they did to him, the team did to him in the playoffs with Guntersville was the fact that they were able to stuff the box and make him throw the ball, and he is just not efficient enough to make you have to respect what he does. And, in a high-scoring game like this, if the Chiefs are able to just contain Bentley, it could be enough to help them win.
So you're saying if Guntersville has to get into a throwing contest, the eggs could go to North Jackson?
Oh, definitely. You got to favor the Chiefs if it turns into an air type of game.
Okay. We're looking at Plainview and Glencoe. Last year, Glencoe came into Plainview. Plainview played them pretty close first half, and then second half it kind of got away from them. This year could be the same situation. Artie, what do you think about Plainview's chances going to Glencoe?
You can't look at last year. This is two totally different teams. The only constant in this whole matchup is Coach Osmond. He's the only thing that's still there. Dale Pruitt's long gone. Coach Goodwin's coming in. He's excited. A lot of the fan base are worried with, rightfully so, because, you had your big senior class gone. And I would imagine, other than the fact of having a really good coach in Coach Osmond at Glencoe, their fan base is a little worried. You lost a ton of kids as well, and once again, a very senior-laden team. This matchup is going to be totally different, I believe, than last year. As far as picking a winner, I would have to go with Glencoe, but I don't think it'll be as big a blowout as some might think.
Well, I think Plainview will be kind of rusty this year. I don't think,
that's fair.
I don't think they'll be a horrible team or even a bad team.
Mm-hmm.
I think they'll have their moments to where they, come out and play like they should.
Mm-hmm.
I also think they'll have their moments in games to where they just kind of fall apart.
Well, that goes along with inexperience, and it goes along with not having those, senior, junior type kids in those key spots.
Well, if I had to pick a winner in this game, I would have to go with Glencoe. I think they're a more powerful, more well-rounded depth type of team.
Mm-hmm.
and I think Plainview may hang with them for a little bit, but then I think Plainview just gets fatigued and tired, and Glencoe just says, okay, it's time to put them away.
That's true.
But looking at Plainview's rival for their next game, you got Sylvania going to Sardis. Plainview played Sardis last week in a Jamboree game. How do you think Sylvania will fare in an actual game against Sardis?
From what I've heard, Sardis is primed and ready to win this year, and Sylvania still looking for a kind of identity at this point. So I would have to go with Sardis on this game, and Gene Hill and company.
Well, you're picking Sardis, and I think I'll go with you on that one. I think Sardis is going to be a pretty good football team this year. Sylvania, having their new head coach, I think they could be risky at times and everything. But moving on down our list, you got number 1 Fife Red Devils going to Geraldine. And my pick, it's got to be Fife. They're going to be probably the dominant team once again in their region, their area, just however you want to look at it. I think Geraldine will fire once they get into their region and everything, but just a flat-out pick, I got to go with Fife.
Well, you got so many new faces for Geraldine, and going into a game like this, it's kind of the lamb to the slaughter, I do believe. I mean, Fife knows who they are. They know exactly who they are, and Geraldine didn't have a clue. So this game could get ugly, to be honest with you.
Well, what about Cleveland going to Pisgah? Pisgah dropped out of the top 10 last week, even though they beat Sexton. Artie, what do you expect from Cleveland?
As far as Cleveland, you go no further than Peyton Gillen, because he is their guy. I mean, he is their do-all. He is quarterback. He runs the ball. He throws the ball. He is the offense. They don't really have a lot more as far as the running game goes. And Pisgah, you're going to see them come out slinging around. So this is probably going to be a shootout. And as far as a winner goes, I would probably lean towards Cleveland. And once again, it's going to be one of those deals like the Chiefs and Gunners. We're going to go with the best player on the field, and I believe that to be Gillen.
I'd agree with you just about everything you said. I think Cleveland, go to Pisgah, come out, play fast, play physical. But picking a game, I'm going to have to go with Cleveland too. Pisgah just still not there yet and everything. But keep going on down our games here for this week. Either at Valiant Head. Valiant Head didn't look like they showed up in their Jamboree game last week.
Well, you could say the same thing for Adder also, because they put it on them. So this is two teams that are kind of stumbling into the season. Would you not agree with that?
Yeah, I'd agree with that. But, if you had to make a pick, who would you pick?
Wow, that's a really good one. I've really studied on this one. We're going to have to go with the familiarity factor. Either, once again, they know exactly who they are. And in this instance, Valley Head don't have a clue because, you get Coach Graham coming in. Maybe the system's not quite in set just yet, and you might have to just favor the Hornets by a little bit.
Yeah, I would think so. I would have to pick Eider in this one as well. Valley Head, I still think they got work to do, even though the season is getting underway. But our last game, real quick, is Raglan going to Gadsden. And Artie, your final thoughts and your winner for our last game in our viewing area.
This was a really good game last year. And surprisingly, it was really low scoring. As far as this year goes, from what I'm hearing, this is supposed to be a really improved Gaston team. And Raglan's just Raglan. I mean, you can't really go a whole lot by what happened last week. They played one of the best teams in the state in general in Maplesville and got pounded 54-7. So you just kind of throw that game out the back door. This is going to be extremely competitive. But I would have to kind of lean toward the Bulldogs just because it's at Gaston. They play so much better there than they do on the road.
Yeah, I'm going Gaston with this one too. Like you said, they play better at home than they do on the road. Is there anything else before we kind of sign off here that you want to throw in?
Well, as far as just things that we want to talk about as a show, we want to send a thank you rather to Boaz for following us on Twitter. Collins will also. You might have a few of those too.
Yeah, we'd like to thank Enterprise for following us on Twitter. Etowah, Gadsden City, already Haleyville High School. Who else do we have on here that we could shout out to?
Well, Columbia, I don't know if you've mentioned them. Coosa Central. If you want to go coaches, being our only one for this week, it will be head coach of Gaston Bulldogs, Swain Morris. So we appreciate all these that we've mentioned following us on Twitter, and we hope more of you will actually do that and give us the support that we need and hope to have.
Well, everybody, continue to follow us on Twitter and subscribe to our YouTube page and watch our videos and everything. We'll give you the details of everything that we know and teams that we cover. Join us again next week for a preview from week 2 and going into week 3. But for Artie here, I'm Brock, and we are signing off from PSN Sports Network.